This book was probably took me about 40 or 50 years to write. It's based on stories that I've heard from the family, but also in the last 10 years on my own research. As you know, veterans don't usually like to talk about war. Can you all hear me? Okay. Also, don't be afraid to interrupt me. If there's something that you heard what I say and you want to ask more about it, don't worry about stopping me, because I would rather have it more of an engagement between us rather than just a straight lecture. So anyway, oops, and this thing keeps changing on me. Okay, so about 95% of this book is based on real events that really happened in the Depression and in World War II. If it didn't happen to someone I interviewed, it happened to a sailor that I read about. Many sailors did oral histories, interviews. One kept a diary, and it was just the most beautiful diary. I printed it out. It was about this thick, and he was on a destroyer very similar to the one my dad was on, and was in the same battles in the destroyer. So I was very interested in what he had to say, and he just spoke from the heart. And so he was on the USS Abbott. So I looked up his name and couldn't find anything about him. He's from Massachusetts. And I asked I thought, well, let me look up his ship. Well, it's still a commissioned ship. And so I found the guys that do reunions on their ship, and I talked to them. I said, they didn't know who he was. I guess they were too young to know who this guy was in 1943. And so I needed permission to use his stuff. It was just the things he saw and explained. He saw a kamikaze just come right in and hit one of our aircraft carriers and cut it in half. And, stuff like that. It's just the phenomenal things that you don't see in a history book. Now, you remember your history book. It's dates, it's names, it's definitions. And I taught for 40 years, and I decided to teach what I found interesting. And so I didn't have the internet when I was first teaching 8th grade history. So I read a lot of biographies and autobiographies, and, because kids really can't warm up to Abraham Lincoln, for example. They know who he is. He's on the $5 bill, whatever, but they really didn't know anything about him, what drove him, So what I did is always tried to provide a backstory, personal narratives, and that is the meat and the bones of history, and it really helped history come alive. So, storytelling. There's been storytelling for centuries, and Doris Carnes Goodwin, who, when I grow up, I want to be just like her. She's a historical presidential historian. History is the telling of stories about people who lived before us in the hope that we can learn from their struggles and triumphs. And she nailed it. That's exactly why I would use personal narratives with my students, so that they could. I also taught at the college level and got the same reaction from both groups. I grew up with a lot of family. This side here is my mother's side. We had 23 first cousins, and this side over here, and you could even see my grandmother just embracing her family. There's like 33 first cousins. So when we had family reunions, we just, all of us, there was kids. We were baby boomers running around, and but a lot of times I would stop and head to the grown-up table, either in the kitchen or in a picnic table, whatever, and they'd start talking. And I had no idea I had a sense of history at the time, but whenever they started telling me stories, like, you think you had it bad when you were a kid? Well, let me tell you how bad I had it, So they, but I started listening, and they just kept going with these amazing stories. And one time when I was like not until I was 20 years old, I remembered to bring a tape recorder, with the little cassette tapes, the very delicate tapes. So I'd set it in front of who was left, my grandmothers, my parents, and they just talked until midnight. And so then I didn't do much with it after, because then, I had a teacher, a job, I had kids, then aging parents later. So about 40 years later was when I could revisit those tapes and really listen to their stories. However, when you interview people and someone said something astounding, don't go to the next question. You just say, what? What did you say? When my grandmother told me that her brother was kicked out of Utica for bootlegging, and I'm like, tell me about that. What happened? So you stop and you let them tell, how was he kicked out of Utica? So, and that's in the first book, the Bean Pickers book. And it's true. He was not an American citizen. He was an immigrant. And it was about 1932. And he did not want to be out in the fields and the migrant work. He didn't want to be in the factories. He wanted to make a quick buck. So he started bootlegging and made a lot of money, but got caught. And they were going to deport him. But the family all came to the courtroom at the time, and my grandmother was ready to faint and everything. So the judge took pity and said, okay, if I see your face in Utica, then I'm going to deport you. So he took a one-way ticket to New York City and became a theatrical agent, booked models and strippers. And so, so that was his character. That was, he wanted to make a fast buck, and he did. He always, when he came back years later, he always had a wad of money like this in his pocket. So, did I switch? Yeah. Okay. So anyway, it started with me personally, with that our relatives were willing to talk. And then when I got into actually teaching history, I started finding personal stories. And these are some of my favorite personal stories, which I won't get into, but this is from the Civil Rights Movement. That's John Lewis, the one that was mowed down on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. This is Elizabeth Eckford, the Little Rock Nine, who went into the school to desegregate it. There's only 9 of them. And the brutal treatment she got once she got into this classrooms. And I had kids read her story. All 3 of them wrote their biographies. And this one is Ann Moody. She's right here. And can you see her hair? So she is desegregating Woolworth's counter. Okay, which was illegal back then. Black people were not allowed at the counter. So here's what these boys were doing. They were dumping mustard and ketchup on their head. And of course, she gets arrested and gets stuck in jail overnight. So the ketchup and the mustard just crusted up on her. She couldn't wash it out until she got home. So I never knew. This is what kids would say to me. I never knew it was that bad. You don't realize, the government just doesn't say, here's the Civil Rights Movement, here's the Civil Rights Act. No, they had to suffer for it. So I think it gives them a deep understanding of what made these people go through what they went through. So after 40 years, I realized how remarkable my family stories were, because I heard them over and over and over again. So then I began digging. And when my parents died, I got a knock on my door. My brother had 4 boxes. He said, well, you just moved to Skinny Atlas. Your house is empty. So here are 4 boxes filled with their documents, their photos. And I said, oh, thanks. He says, well, I don't have any room in my house. So I took them, all right? And this is one of the photos that I found. I don't think he's 19 years old there, because he joined the Navy. Again, he was the oldest of 6 kids, and a lot of family responsibilities. And so he just said, I had to leave. One less mouth to feed. He did not have money for any education, so the Navy was his choice. So in 1937, he joined at 17 years old, and then had basic training at 38 years old. But do you see what he's holding in his hand? And I found it I found it, and I'm like, this has got to be the prototype. So, because when he joined the Navy, they put him in the kitchen, in the mess hall, and he didn't want to do that. He was promised by a recruiter to be a printer, and he went up to his CO. He says, "I was promised to be a printer." "Oh, well, that job's filled. Do you want to be a torpedo man, or do you want to stay in the kitchen?" So he decided to become a torpedo man. So this is an actual model of the torpedo, and he spent 20 years as a torpedo man. So you want to
those were way bigger.
They are. That's a model.
Oh, I got you. It's heavy though.
A torpedo weighs about 1,200 pounds, and back then they were not automatically loaded, so they had to load them. A lot of stories about him with his torpedoes. This was, what amazed me was, if he kept that with him all his life, to every city he went to and every new house he went to, it must have been important to him. And I found this too. Does anybody know what this is? No, it's a gyroscope, and it spins. They get it to spin, and what it does is it steadies a torpedo to keep it. Don't forget, they didn't have computers back then where they could be accurate, so sometimes torpedoes would miss their mark, as you know. So this is pretty heavy. So the other thing I found was, I forgot, a micrometer. This is a micrometer to make very delicate adjustments to it. So these were all his tools. So they must have been important to him because they were in the box. And when you're at sea, he became a card shark. He played checkers and chess, and he also started sewing. And I have no idea what this is, but this was in the box, so he must have spent a lot of time on it too. Some guy
did he make it or win it in a poker game?
No, he made it. Some guy from Utica said to me, "That looks like a symbol," so I have to do some research on that. If he was trying to, if it means something, I don't know. Nobody recognizes it. This is really cool. In the Pacific, once the war started, of course, pilots would be gunned down a lot, shot down, and they're in the water. So this was a mirror to flash so that the boats can locate them. So what you do is you point it to the sun, and there's a cross on the other side. If the cross hits your chest, then it's working. That the sun is you got to have sun. So, but I think this is a really cool instrument too. It's over 80 years old. All of these are over 80 years old. My assistant here.
Karen was my college RA at Oswego. We lived next door to each other, so we've been friends for
50 years.
50 plus years. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I did a lot of oral history. I love listening to people's stories. But I also I went online, I also read other books and personal accounts. And I, of course, preserved artifacts. The stories I compiled, and really the sailor in the book is a composite of other sailors. So what the protagonist went through really happened, but maybe not necessarily to him, okay, based on what other sailors have.
I kind of want to, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead, interrupt.
I mean, because you're educated to be a college level history professor. It's accurate, but it's not accurate. Does that make sense? Like, you fictionalize your father's role, but you base it on other things that you read.
That were true, that really happened.
True.
So I put him in the...
Fit into just history as history.
Well, this is what's called historical fiction.
So you wouldn't say that this was ever a history book?
No, no. This is a history book. This is nonfiction, and the stories in here really happened, and they're documented and everything else. Okay, this is the first time I decided to make it fictitious. Okay, so I'm trying to think of some stories that are historical fiction.
Yeah, that's what.
Oh, lots, and a lot of people prefer reading that because there are a lot more interesting stories to tell
and
than
I have, and when you're
dates and names.
exactly, and when you're writing fiction, you have a lot more leeway with the characters to do what you want with them. But the reason why I base it on what really happened is because I really want 14-year-old and older to read it, you know, and to really find out what happened in the war.
Them to get that history education.
Right.
Through a fictional.
Through a fictional, right.
Oh, you got cameras that have your.
No, I'm glad you asked. The other thing I found, this was a real find, this green book is his Navy log. Every single, they didn't have computers back then, so you had this log on you whenever you mustered on a ship, okay? They typed in every single port you've been through, any award you ever received or promotion, and any battle. So I followed exactly what he did in 41, 42, 43. I knew exactly what island he was on, and that's what guided my story, was the Navy log. So, does anybody know what a shellback is? I thought it was quite interesting. A shellback is an experienced sailor after being initiated like a college hazing. And it was pretty brutal when it started out. The British started it like 400 years ago, okay? But now it's pretty much calmed down. They make it more fun than anything. But as soon as you cross the equator, you start out as a recruit. You're a pollywog. And when you're initiated, you are a shellback. So you're a crusty old salty shellback, okay? And that makes you experienced. And in his Navy log, it says qualified shellback. So there's different types of shellbacks, so I had to look that up, but that. And it's follows Neptune, the Roman god of the sea, who somebody masquerades as. And the captain puts Neptune in charge of the ship for 2 days, okay? And he tells the polywogs what they have to do. And my father has a stack of pictures this thick. He was a camera bug, so he took so many pictures of these initiations. But this is like one of the better ones that I found. And here they had to dress up. They had to recite poetry, sing songs. They had to dance, like hula girls or whatever. So, so he got a picture of that. And also, this is a picture of him. They pretended that these two are getting married. This is his wife, and he's the priest, so he marries them. So I thought that was kind of fun. And you all walk away with a certificate from Neptune Rex, King Neptune. And he still has carried his with him, okay? It's very, very delicate, so I really couldn't bring it. But when I spoke in Utica, 2 guys brought theirs.
Oh, wow.
It was really cool. So the novel is in 2 parts, okay? The first part, Francis is the protagonist, as a young boy, and he just hates his life. He doesn't know where his next meal is coming from. I just got to get out of here. It's, you know, there's got to be a better life somewhere, okay? His parents spoke only Italian at the time. So he would even speak to them in English to get them to learn English. And for Thanksgiving one time, I got a story in here. No, I think I have it in both books. The parents didn't know what Thanksgiving was. Why do you eat turkey? So they called it Turkey Day, you know. So one day my grandmother was coming back from the hospital to see her husband, and my aunt told me this, she was 95 years old. She spotted a duck, and she slid down the hill, grabbed the duck, broke its neck, brought it home, and they had duck for Thanksgiving. They said, we're supposed to eat turkey. Same thing. It's a bird, so. It tastes like, exactly. So, I mean, that just a little taste of, so that's the first part, just tells you how poor he was. And a lot of immigrant children were poor. The worst thing that happened in 1928 was his father worked on the construction. He was a real bull of a man, and he worked on construction, laying pipeline, and there was a huge cave-in. And he was buried for 45 minutes. And the only reason he came out alive is his head was in the pipe, so he could breathe and wait till they dug him out. But he broke both arms, both legs, collarbones, and he was laid up. And of course, never got the kind of money again, because one leg became shorter than the other, and it was arthritic. And so this was in 1928. And then what happens in 1929? The stock market crashes. So the depression, so it got even worse once the father was buried alive. So the kids in the family, most immigrant children and other children, did all they could to bring pennies home. Migrant work was big. In the 1920s, about 95% of America was agrarian. And so there was a lot of farmland, more farmers than ever. So a lot of kids took to doing farm work. And my family was no exception. All my aunts and uncles, they were in those fields from when they were babies up until they were 18 years old, every summer. And because they lived in Utica, the farmland was surrounding, so they had to take a truck brought them there, and they lived in shacks that were built by the farmers so that they can walk out into the fields, from their shacks. So they were there all summer long. Bootlegging, some, like my uncle, another uncle played baseball for money, and he became quite good. He was recognized. He got a contract from the Buffalo Bisons, and it's a farm team that's still around. But he got injured in a factory accident, and they withdrew the contract. So, I mean, they came close. They tried really, really hard. My other uncle sold newspapers on busy corners, newsies they called them, at 8 years old. My aunt that I talked about, the 95-year-old, she lived to be 100, and I used to interview her on the phone. And it was like 10 o'clock at night. And I go, tell me about the shacks. What was it like? Well, there was no bathrooms, the outhouse. You had to go to the outhouse. She said one side was straw and hay for the boys to sleep on, and the other side of the shack was straw for the girls to sleep on. She goes, you could see them, because she took the bus every Tuesday to Turning Stone to gamble. So she said, oh, it's on Route 5 on the way to Turning Stone. So I grabbed my daughter, she's a history teacher now. I said, you are going to see your grandparents' summer home. So that's what she got out of the car very slowly. She just couldn't believe her eyes. And it just reeks of poverty. These are 10 doors, so there was 10 apartments. So when you were assigned a door, and it was a little narrow room like this, no refrigeration, okay? Of course, no bathroom. A bare light bulb hanging down in the center, and that was where you lived from July and August, pretty much. So this building is this building, okay? And this building, anybody guess what this building was? It's pretty run down now, but any guesses?
Where they put the beans?
Close. It's the kitchen.
Oh, wow.
And there was one stove for the 10 families. So when that whistle went off for you to eat, you started at 7 in the morning, and the whistle let you go at 7 at night. Okay, so there's a long line with people trying to get to one stove, to get a burner on one stove. So I peeked in here, And here are the bushels, the bean picking bushels. So I thought that was amazing. So this is where he just said, there's nothing for me here. There's just nothing but misery here for me. So that's when he decided at 17 years old to join the Navy. And he took a lot to convince his father. But so here he is, the girl next door, he decides to, he wanted to make sure someone's waiting for him. A lot of guys want to have. So the girl next door was my mom. So he got engaged to her. So he wanted to make sure he had a girl. And this was his first destroyer. This was the USS Whitney. Okay. I love this picture. This is him working on a torpedo, eating a sandwich. Talk about multitasking. When I saw these pictures, I just couldn't believe it. And here he is here, maybe studying. I don't know if it looks a little bit like this here, but I'm not sure if it is or not. There was a book that I had of his, and it's not here. Hold on. Oh, I don't know what happened to the book. Okay. Anyway, he was the type that he became very interested in. He could think spatially. He could take apart a torpedo. There was 3 kinds of torpedoes, mechanical, chemical. He also did, God, I can't think tonight, those big things that they throw in for submarines. Depth chargers. So he also figured out the length that it should go, a depth charge should go. So it was a warship, so, that was his job to take care of. He talked a lot about his life at sea, not about the battles, but pretty much how he had to overcome seasickness. I have a chapter on that. But what really attracted him to the Navy as opposed to the Army was the 3 hots and a cot. You always get a hot meal, and you always have your own bunk that's yours. Where in the Army, you're walking around with a 70-pound backpack, and you could sleep in a ditch that night. So that's what really encouraged him to go to the Navy. He had no idea. He was in the Atlantic for 3 years, and then by 1941, he ended up at Pearl Harbor. And that's where that picture came from. When I saw this picture of him, I said, oh my God, he just looks like I'm in paradise. This is great. And I turned the picture around, and it says July 1941. Wow. So I said, in 5 months, it's not going to be paradise, because that's when the surprise attack happens. He even kept that little green thing is his Liberty Pass. He loved going to Honolulu with his buddies, and there's the Moana Hotel that's still there, and he loved big band music, and he loved to dance. Later on his honeymoon, him and his wife won a Arthur Murray contest because they loved to dance so much. So what I'd like to do, I do a whole chapter on what I think he did. So this is where the fiction comes in. He never talked about any of the girls that he danced with or whatever, but yeah, go ahead.
Who is this man to you?
My dad.
Oh, because I figured that out, but then you don't speak of him as my father. So.
Well, I'm speaking of him as the character in the book, so, yeah, right.
But you don't go around and say, this book is 100% my father. This book is based on my father. Based,
and you see movies based on a true story, They fill in the dialogue. They fill in, Right. They imagine what could have happened. And that's what I did. I just know his personality enough. I know what he probably would have done to dance and stuff. So, yeah, that part is fictitious. So he goes to Honolulu and on a Saturday night, And that night there was a battle of the bands. It was the USS Arizona versus the Pennsylvania, the bands there. And then, so after everybody went to go to the battle of the bands, but he spent all his money, so he was broke and didn't go to the battle of the bands. But that next morning was Sunday morning. And it was December 7th, 1941. So early the next morning, I relaxed in my skivvies on my bunk. Too early to get dressed. It was Sunday. Shipmates were snoring, some after partying in Honolulu, some after working a late shift. Others were catching up on answering letters or preparing for church services. Ski, our insomniac, another shipmate, wandered between the men's bunks. I can't sleep. I can't wait for Liberty this afternoon. Do you think I'll get to a luau? I'm trying to get some shut-eye, Ski. Why don't you read the ship's manual and report back some interesting stuff? I said, turning over pillow over my head. Yeah, Chubby piped in. Give it a rest. You nervous? Ski did not respond. He stopped abruptly, standing motionless, staring, listening, fingers to his lips. Shh, what's that noise? The room was still. We listened. With no windows below deck, it was hard to tell what was going on outside. We heard planes thundering by. A machine gun began to chatter. Sounds of explosions followed. What the heck was that? I asked, sitting up. Chubby dismissed the sounds. Probably air maneuvers on Ford Island. Ski flipped open a hatch that was 3 feet above the ship's waterline. Stretching his neck to view the sky, he yelled, "Wait a minute. Those planes don't have stars. They're red balls. Japanese suns, zeros. Hey, they're Jap planes. Wow, Jap planes everywhere. What the hell are they doing? They're bombing us." What? Are you sure? I asked. At that instant, air raid sirens blared. Our loudspeaker blared. Man your battle stations. This is not a drill. Searching for my work pants, I threw items into the air. I couldn't find them. Heart pounding. Breathing fast, men scrambling by me. Leave clothes behind, get to my gun. On my way up, I spotted Chubby trembling. I can't find my other shoe. It's okay, Chubby, forget him. I grabbed his arm. Come on, we can do this. Chubby snapped to and followed me up the metal stairs. His confusion surprised me. He always seemed so confident with sea life. I guess it was my turn to look out for him. On deck, I gazed up at the sky. Japanese planes looked like pelicans flying in formation until they dove and circled above our heads. More explosions, fire. Half-naked sailors ran on deck to their stations. Our guns could not be armed in friendly waters. That rule cost us valuable seconds to load them. As captain of my gun station, I pivoted around to view the harbor and saw that our guns were pointing at our own closely docked ships. Our ships are too close together. We're going to shoot one another, I yelled. So what do we do now? Asked Ski. Bombs dropping and whistling over the harbor. Worried about friendly fire, I ordered, aim your guns vertically up overhead. When you spot a plane, rapidly fire just ahead of it. It might fly into our bullets. It was a good idea, but we found it hard to coordinate the triggering in time for the fast-moving planes to fly in our line of fire. Confusing orders made it hard to switch tasks. Extinguish fires, boomed the loudspeaker. Barefooted, we left our battle stations, sidestepping hot spent cartridges that bounced on the ship's deck. I spotted a second formation of enemy planes heading for another attack. Another change in orders. Battle stations. I ran back to my gun, repeating to my men, aim upward. A few planes were hit and spiraled into the harbor. With all the bullets that were fired, it was hard to tell who shot which plane. Everyone got trigger happy, shooting at any plane. Oh no, said Ski, someone just shot down one of our own planes. This is crazy. A Japanese pilot flew so low that I saw his face grinning at me. It was hard to appear tough in my underwear. As if to say, watch this, he released an aerial torpedo into the water. The fish, what they called the fish, beeline to the port side of a nearby battleship, blowing it to bits. Badly burned men screamed as their bodies scattered high into the sky like fireworks, some landing in hot, oil-slicked water. Ships sputtered billows of smoke, listing sideways from the impact. Gun turrets and shipmasts were replaced by rubble and wreckage. Until the day I die, I will never forget how the USS Arizona exploded. I later learned that 8 bombs were dropped on the battleship, one heading straight down to its magazine, the ammunition room. An explosive chain reaction ignited cans of black powder, thousands of rounds of machine gun bullets, and all its torpedoes. I could no longer see the ship through the fire and the heavy smoke. I watched fighter planes, dive bombers, and torpedoes capsize ships and turn American planes into ruins. Strafing bullets, blown up buildings, bomb craters everywhere, and killing of our young men, even civilians. For a few seconds, I stood motionless amid the chaos, frozen in time. I turned to Chubby. My God, this is what war looks like. After 2 hours, buzzing planes disappeared into the clouds. I searched the skies for another attack formation, but all seemed quiet. We stared through the thick black smoke, blocking the harbor's serene waters and blue Hawaiian sky. My knees weakened at the sight of stately battleships' crushed decks, sounds of men's cries, smells of fires. It was difficult to breathe. Our island paradise became hell on earth. So that's the Pearl Harbor chapter. And that was, I put together from what he told me, from what other sailors have witnessed. What interested me was on the Arizona, there was a 15-year-old. His father agreed to lie that he was 18. So a lot of really young casualties. So this is the Whitney, and again, it's a warship, is an official photo, I guess. And this is him here because he's near the other officers. About 17 years later, a reporter came to my house, and it was the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. So they wanted to interview him. That's where I got it was hell on earth, because he really was quoted as saying that. Yeah, do you know which one's that I am? Okay, this is me. Yep, because I was the youngest, right? And the reporter said to me, now this is serious, no smiling. He's telling the very bad story. So everybody's trying really hard to, I couldn't help it, I had to smile. This is too funny. This blew me away when I opened the box. It's a postcard to his wife-to-be. And notice the date. Can anybody see the date on the postcard?
December
11th. So
41.
she didn't know what happened to him. There were no phones, cell phones back then. And so there were a lot of Americans that didn't even know where Pearl Harbor was, because it was not a state yet. It was not a honeymoon place yet. The government took it over, and they made a military, just like Guam now is still one of our military bases. So it still is. It still is. So I read it, and I still feel the same about you, and things are going well here. Never mentioned, holy man, what I went through. You wouldn't see the blood. Never mentioned a thing about the war. What he was telling her was, I'm okay. And if you notice this little stamp here, passed by the Navy censor. So when this war started, I picture rooms and rows of people just reading mail, and cutting out or blacking out anything. Because once when he was in Alaska, he said, it's really cold up here. That got blacked out. Okay, because you cannot indicate anything, give any information of where you were. So you could see that this was passed, but he knew that would pass the censor if he didn't say anything about the...
That one little word crossed out, was that the censor or your dad?
Oh, good question.
He probably just made a mistake.
It looks like a mistake to me.
Would have been like a stamp.
I'm also feeling fine, it said. So that he probably meant to say I'm feeling safe.
I wonder how long it took for that letter to get to your mom.
Well, that's a good question. I never asked.
Probably took a long time.
Yeah. Oh, especially it's a postcard, you know. I thought this was interesting because this is the harbor on December 7th. And they still do this. They still put all their eggs in one basket. They put all the cruisers, the destroyers, the battleships. The only thing not represented here is the aircraft carrier. The one that was on its way got caught in a storm. So the aircraft carriers were also they were the ship of the future at that time, but they were not here on December 7th. So I wish this thing worked, but I guess it doesn't. Oh, it does. Now, how come it doesn't? Oh, it only works up here, but down on, all right, never mind. So this is Battleship Row right here. Okay. Here's the Arizona's red. Okay. Nevada, Tennessee, West Virginia, and so on. And then there's other battleships on the other side of Ford Island. Okay. Now, they would do flotillas. So these destroyers were in a flotilla. So here's the Whitney, the USS Whitney. So here's where my dad was in relationship. So you could see he was like perpendicular to the Arizona right here. And I'm going to just go ahead in history a little bit. In 1986, he was retired. He was in Florida. The Challenger blows up. Remember the Challenger blowing up? He was on a golf course at the time. So I called him that night. I said, did you see it? Oh my God, that must have been so awful. He goes, yeah, it was awful, but not as bad as watching the Arizona blow up. And I just like, this man has seen 2 20th century disasters in his lifetime. So that's what made me say, you know, what did the Arizona look like blowing up? Well, many pilots, the Japanese pilots, not only, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't have even thought of having a camera, but many of the pilots took pictures from their planes. Many journalists were there. They're the ones that thought of grabbing a camera. You know, when you got bullets strafing around you, you want to get out of there. But some people, oh, let me get my camera. So we do have pictures and some footage. And the one that I find the most interesting is this ship right here, the Solace. Okay, it was a hospital satellite ship. The hospital is down here, Navy hospital's down here, but if anybody gets injured or whatever at work, they can go here to this, it's closer, okay? So again, look at right in view of the Arizona, somebody on the Solace grabbed a camera and took the pictures. Now, when you think of World War II pictures, you think black and white. Well, somebody computer colorized it, and it is so much more amazing to see it in color blowing up. So I went to YouTube, and this is where I might need some help trying to access it. Oh, it's down there. The link is right there. But this also I just found is the first picture taken by a Japanese pilot. This was taken from his plane, and this is Battleship Row. Okay, the Solace is over here, and the Whitney's over here. So this is the first bomb that hit. And that was their orders, I found later, that they were ordered to bomb the battleships, aircraft carriers, if there were any, and the planes. And that is probably why a lot of the destroyers did not get it, or the cruisers. They were after the big ones, okay? But I just find that just amazing. Okay, in this, I just looked for some, you can go to the National Archives and they have a lot of, but just to get an idea, now you're a sailor and you survive this, but you walk around, this is what you see. This is what the harbor looks like. This is what the ships look like. A lot of just wreckage. that smoke on the right is not a ship burning, it's oil burning. And the oil slick turned out to be even more damaging than a bomb itself, because these men were thrown into the water and they were just covered with black, and they burned so quickly that a lot of the sailors were sent on rowboats, search and rescue, and trying to grab them and get them into the boat, like their hands would come right off. It was really that bad. And the medics, the hospital, of course, was full. The medics, they had to decide right there and then, is this man good? Can we save him? If we can't, they have to move on. So they kind of had to play God and decide who they can save and who they can't save. One medic said that all they found was a hand. So they took their fingerprints to figure out who he was, that died. All of them, after the search and rescue, as you know, once a week or so goes by, it's search and recovery. It's now recovering. So even that was heartbreaking, because in your rowboat, you're trying to gather people, and men in the harbor, their bodies blew up so badly they couldn't fit them in the rowboat. They would just tie ropes around their feet and just drag them. And so what do you do with them? Okay, December 8th, war was declared, so now we're at war, but we've got to do something with the dead. So they did this mass grave on the right, on the left. And then on the right, the colored picture is later built in the late 40s, after the war, the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific. Every family had the option of either letting them stay there or bring them home. So war is expensive, including bringing them home. Same thing with Normandy. And any of the men that were killed, you could either have them stay there or bring them home. And even to this day, there are people that are getting, right now, work for the government that are looking for remains of Vietnam veterans in Laos and Cambodia. And they just found one a few months ago. So they still search to bring them home. They want to honor them and have a proper burial for them. So just to give you an idea of the toll that this took on them, 18 ships were sunk or severely damaged, including 8 battleships. I think 2 of them were scrapped. They were too badly, well, the Arizona, as you know, was buried, and they made a memorial out of it. But look at the casualties, the total. 2,403 total deaths in 2 hours, okay? But look who suffered the most deaths. The Navy, and that was the Arizona. So we're in war, December 8th. So Francis finds himself in the Pacific Theater. And this is one of the new technologies that was used. They called it a flying bed spring. It looks like a bed spring. Does anybody know what that is? The radar, right, radar. And so radar, of course, made life, even though it wasn't quite as accurate as it is today, but it still was enabling them to be able to view ships nearby. And then what's the underwater one called? Sonar, right. And again, my father was involved in sonar, and I do a couple of pages on, they hear this pinging sound and this high-pitched sound. They thought it was a submarine, and they tracked it. They couldn't figure out what it was, and they fired a torpedo at it, and a big thing came out of the water with blood. It was a huge whale carcass. So, talk about collateral damage. When you're fighting at sea, they're going to get in the way. I didn't mean to spend a lot of time at burials. Let's say a lot of my students, they get hung up on this. And especially if a pilot is shot down, okay? Again, the utmost respect. you can't, you're aboard ship, what do you do with bodies? You can't take them with you. So the burial at sea was a very big practice. And they would embalm the body and then put a flag over it and then slide it into the water. The pilots, they would take a part of their plane for ballast so that he would go down to the bottom of the ocean. He wouldn't float. And so they'd have to attach a weight to you in order to do that. And the families then would not have a choice of whether or not they were going to come home. Oh, I had a piece of paper with some, oh, here it is. I just like to research, so let's see. In World War II, 6,329 military men were buried at sea because they just have to keep moving on. The photojournalists, I'm intrigued by them. I've seen a lot of museums with their work, but they're gone, but it's left in their camera. 37 photojournalists died in World War II, 112 were wounded, and 50 were taken prisoner. Vietnam, there were 63 of them, photojournalists, that died in Vietnam. This is, again, a makeshift grave, and again, they're in the middle of battle, but they take the time to bury their buddies. And this is in Tarawa. It's one of the first islands, one of the bloodiest battles, kind of like Normandy, because there was like 900 Marines that were set to get on the island, and 60% of them were gunned down before they even made it out of the water. So a lot of casualties there. Toward the end, the Japanese were we were playing leapfrog, getting closer and closer from island to island hopping to get closer and closer to Japan, and we were getting really close. And they were running out of pilots, so they would take these young kids, shave their heads so that they look pure, and they would drink sake before they got on the plane, so to kind of calm their nerves. And this one just absolutely blows me away. I don't know if you could make out, again, there's a photojournalist that took this. It's a nanosecond. Something happens a nanosecond later. Do you see it?
The plane coming in.
Yeah, this is a kamikaze plane. So nanosecond before it hits these guys here. So I don't know if the photojournalist dies and doesn't make it, but somehow that got taken. The one sailor that the one whose diary I took, he watched a kamikaze hit. A lot of times they miss too. They're not as accurate either, but they cut this aircraft carrier in two, and it exploded with all the ammunition on there. So there's about 100 or so of our ships around, and they just move in to get the survivors, bring them aboard, and then they take them back to Pearl Harbor, the base there, and they get reassigned another area. But the ones that were stuck on the ship that sunk, that was sinking and stuff, the Navy had no choice but to blow up. This is according to this sailor. They had to blow up the aircraft carrier so that it would not get in the hands of the enemy. So very, very hard things to do at 19, 20, 24 years old. Okay, this is an artist. I had an artist do the War in the Pacific. So this is Pearl Harbor here, okay, where it begins. And this is the Aleutian Islands, Attu and Kiska. Now you can see how close they are. Now Japan took control of those two islands. That was top secret. You know, the Americans did not want to worry the Americans because they could easily attack the United States, the California and stuff from here. So after Pearl Harbor, my father was sent to the Aleutians. They had to blockade the Japanese and starve them out. But what happened was the Japanese blockaded the blockade, and they were stuck with no supplies for 9 months. And all that was left were just bags of rice. And they ate rice every single day. And I don't remember a day when my father ate rice, ever. He wouldn't look at it, ever since then. So here's Midway. Here's Tarawa down here. He was one of his ships. What I did is I followed his Navy log, okay? So their job was to bomb the hell out of the island for 3 days, then send the Marines in and clean up, Sometimes it worked. And he ended up in Guam and Saipan. And then he gets pulled out of the war. He gets sent to San Diego to officer training school. So he didn't get to Iwo Jima, Okinawa, and of course the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the atom bombs being dropped on him. So it gives you I put this in the book too, because kids could really follow, how it worked and where he went. Any questions or observations? Okay, this is post-war. He stayed in the Navy until 56. And I've read beer was not allowed. You can't serve your soldiers beer and expect them to fight. So I said, those look like GI beer cans. So I'm guessing it was after the war, he was sent to guard the Mediterranean. Okay, and he was stationed in Naples, the same port where his father left Italy to immigrate to America 50 years earlier. So very interesting. So I just thought I'd throw those pictures in. You could really, they look like old salts, with the pipe and, and the beards, they really do look salty.
Where is he?
He's down at the front to the right.
Okay.
And there he is over here with his cap on. With his, he made it as far as a CPO. And yeah. And that's it. So,
Wow.
any questions? Thank you.